Hey, good people. Welcome to FiddleHed Fiddle Lessons. Good to have you. I'm really glad to be here teaching you today. Grateful for it. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you for taking part. So this lesson is on how to learn tunes more easily. So I'm going to suggest 5 strategies to help you do that, and then I'm going to have separate lessons that go into more detail on each of those strategies. So here we go. 5 strategies to help you learn tunes more easily. Know your scales. Daily listening. Look for repeating patterns. Simplify. Sing, hum, whistle. So let's go into more detail on each strategy. First is know your scales. So there's, I would say, 5 essential scales you could learn. First would be G major, D major, A major, E Dorian or E minor, A Dorian, A minor. The vast majority of American and Celtic fiddle music is in these scales, so it's a very good idea for you to start there and learn them as well as you can. I'm going to go into more detail on why that is and on different types of other scales that are useful and different ways of doing these scales in a dedicated lesson, which is called What Are the Best Fiddle Scales? Okay, so let's move on. The second strategy to help you learn tunes more easily is daily listening. Listening is practice too. So there's 2 main kinds of listening, passive and active. Passive listening is what most people do. You know, they're walking around all day, they've got earbuds in, and they've got their own personal soundtrack going. And so that has its benefits for learning music because it's just more absorbing. You're just constantly absorbing. I'm not really trying to say listen to music all day long or not do that, but there are benefits if you kind of just have the music coming in when you're not paying attention that closely. Active listening, on the other hand, is when you have complete focus, 100% attention on listening. And that's very important to do. I recommend you all do that if you take nothing else from this whole lesson to do that. And there's a lot of different ways and practices you can actively listen. I would start by taking the tunes you're working on and just spend like a few minutes when you're not at your instrument listening to them very closely, full attention, breathing deeply. And then do a little bit of that while you're playing too. So say you're working on some new tune, Tamlin, listen to it once just to kind of get an overall picture and then go and start learning it. So what the listening does, among other things, is that it's helping you make a mental map of the music. It's also really fun. It's really an enjoyable thing. And one great thing about listening while you're learning an instrument is that you're going to learn to listen more deeply and discover things you wouldn't have discovered otherwise. So, and then on the category of active listening, there's a lot of other things you can do. You can listen for each instrument. You can listen for the whole. You can ask yourself what the form is. You can try to sing different parts. As another way to actively engage with it. I'm gonna have what else? And you can even learn tunes this way. That's a little bit more advanced thing, but I've spent time like in the band van for hours with Diego's umbrella, just driving in the middle of nowhere, and I've listened to tunes slowed down and looping on each part and trying to hum that part until I get it. You can actually learn music that way. Okay, so let's move on. The third strategy to help you learn tunes more easily is to look for repeating patterns. So, if you can notice repeating patterns in music, it makes it a lot easier on your brain. So take Swallowtail Jig, the first quarter is very similar to the third quarter. So if you notice that and you can sync that up as you go, then what it means is that like you're learning the tune, you're learning the first quarter, the second quarter, and then you're like, oh, it's time to do the third quarter. That's kind of like the first. And you just make that job a lot easier on your brain, and you're able to kind of put the whole tune together faster. I hope that makes sense. And to help train you to do this, I've created 2 tools. And one that's found on FiddleHed.com is color-coded tabs. And so color-coded tabs are good because they tell you which part of the tunes are repeated. The same color is the same exact part repeated. So oftentimes the first quarter is the same as the third, so they'll be the same color, usually red in my system. So, people think in terms of colors. They organize things with colors. Like I got my calendar, social things are orange, lessons are green, there's stuff like that, and it helps you kind of get a picture of it. So I think you'll find that useful. The other tool I've created is tune mapping, which is kind of a similar system for mapping out like the form of the tune and where the repetition lies. So this is just sort of a general lesson, so I'm not going to go into it here. If that sounds intriguing to you, then check it out. That lesson will be called, I think it'll be called just Repeating Patterns in Fiddle Tunes. Okay, so the fourth strategy to help you learn tunes more easily is to simplify. So basically, you just want to learn the simplest, purest form of the melody. Okay? There may be some recording that you love of Kevin Burke playing some Irish tune with tons of embellishments that are just amazing. But if you can find a simpler version, that will serve you better as a beginner or as just learning the tune, because then you can just focus on the basic melody and then later add variation, either your own variations, or you can study variations of famous players and recordings and things like that. And one suggestion for finding simple versions, besides FiddleHed, which is really designed with a beginner in mind, there's a lot of repetition. But another way to do that is thing to look for is there's a lot of these like baby Mozart recordings, and if you can find a version of it, they're kind of cheesy, but they have very clear melodies. You can find something like that. So there's 2 main strategies for simplifying, and one is to remove all embellishments. So say there's a tune like Hesh Jig with turns. There's tons of frilly things, diddly-doos. Try to remove them if possible. And then you could also remove double stops, droning double stops, and slides. So anything extra, take out. Not to say you can never do that, but when learning it, keep it as simple as possible. The other main strategy for simplifying is to discover hidden repetition. Sometimes you'll find versions of tunes in which the first and third quarters are different, and then you'll find another version in which the first and third quarter are the same. Go with that version if possible. As much as possible, try to learn things with more repetition. And you can sometimes even analyze it and say like, well, the first quarter is pretty much the third. I'm going to make them the same. And that's what I do a lot on FiddleHed, because I'm just trying to get you going, learning and playing and enjoying music as soon as possible. Once you get to a certain point, then we can kind of go back to these tunes and add to them. I'm going to give you an example. Britches Full of Stitches, I've seen versions online in which the first and third quarters are different, where the first quarter is, and the third quarter is. So I've also seen versions in which they're both the same, they're both like the third quarter. So that's the version I use, and that's the version I kind of created, and all the tunes I kind of arranged that way. So, but you can do that on your own and take the lesson on simplifying tunes if you're interested in learning more about that. Excellent. So the final strategy for learning tunes more easily is to sing, hum, or whistle what you play. You can do it for the whole tune, You can do it for part of the tune. And what this does is it's helping to clarify that mental map you're making of the tune. It's also engaging you in a different way, getting you to look at the tune in a different way, because it sounds different when it's coming from your voice or humming or whistling than it does from the fiddle. So it's helping your brain create this more three-dimensional view of the tune, okay? And you can do it on the full tune, or you can do it on just a part. Do 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 do. Do, 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 do. You can alternate like that. You can eventually do them at the same time. Do, 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 do. And then you can also sing, hum, or whistle when you're nowhere near your instrument. You know, you're just, I don't know, taking a break at work. You know, listen to the tune, sing along, hum along. You know, that's practice too. Listening is practice too. Anyhow, these 5 strategies will help you to learn tunes more easily. But the goal is not to just consume a bunch of tunes as quickly as possible. The main benefit of this is that they're just really good practice habits. And I'm pretty sure that if you have good practice habits, you'll enjoy playing this thing for a long time to come. Thanks for watching, folks. See you next time on FiddleHed. Go to FiddleHed.com for a progressive, step-by-step course outline, color-coded tabs, play-along tracks, sheet music, and much more. Thanks for watching the videography. Excellent! And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.